Okay, good morning. Just to get started, thank you so much for your time and for your patience. So it's important for us to have this conversation, and better late than never, because in our city we've been hearing a lot of stories surrounding discrimination, bullying, and mistreatment of our community members due to the fact that they're immigrants, and also because of their faith, right? Because of who they choose to worship. And simply put, that is not a culture that we've been working to create in our city. And I may be able to echo that a little bit more. But more so, I want to make sure that we put this out there, that if you've been discriminated against based on your color, your religion, your race, your national origin, in employment, housing, and public accommodation, please call the Commission on Human Relations, and they'll be able to investigate the complaint at no charge to you. So now we're going to have some people that are going to be able to speak to the details. I'm going to welcome Dr. Prasad Whadya, who is the director of the State Immigrants' Rights Clinic, to speak, followed by the Imam, Hamza Perez, and followed by Ibrahim Snow, who is the member of the Pittsburgh Muslim community and also board member of the Light of the Age Mosque. And we'll conclude by Wasi, who is the executive director of Engage, PA, and the Islamic Center of Pittsburgh. Thank you.
Good morning. It's an honor to be here. My name is Shobha Siva Prasad Whadya. I come to this issue as an immigration attorney for nearly 20 years, and for the last 10 teaching at Penn State Law and running a clinic called the Center for Immigrants' Rights. I also am here today as a child of South Indian immigrants. My mother came to the United States as the spouse of a green card holder, and that's significant if we think about the types of relationships that are blocked under this Muslim travel ban. So the story of the Muslim ban started long before 3.0. We had a first version signed in January of 2017, a second version in March of last year, and now we are in version 3.0. It's not a computer program, right? These are orders that have human impact and have been litigated across the country in various court challenges. So the Immigration and Nationality Act is the statute that runs or serves as a framework for immigration. It has been compared second in complication to the U.S. tax code. It was first passed by Congress in 1952. There is one section of the act called 1182F. It is a suspension clause. It authorizes the president to suspend the entry of any non-citizen or class of non-citizens if such entry would be detrimental to the interests of the United States. There is a second clause in the immigration statute known as 1152A. This is a non-discrimination clause. It was created by Congress in 1965 in conjunction with striking down the national origin quotas. And it reads something like this: in the issuance of immigrant or permanent visas, there shall be no discrimination based on nationality, place of birth, residence, and so on. These two sections, the suspension clause and the non-discrimination clause, were at the heart of many of the statutory arguments surrounding Muslim Ban 3.0. So let's now fast forward to the litigation around 3.0. The two most prominent lawsuits started in the Hawaii and Maryland courts. Appeals were made to the Ninth and Fourth Circuit courts. And the Supreme Court did an unusual thing in December 4th of last year. They said, while the courts are deciding what to do about these bans, we are going to reinstate the entirety of the ban until a final decision is made. And so from that standpoint, we have been able to witness firsthand what the on-the-ground impact of the bans are, even before the Supreme Court decision on June 26th of this year. So the Supreme Court issued its decision just last month. It was a 5-4 decision. The majority opinion was written by Chief Justice Roberts, and he found that the ban was fully lawful. He found that the suspension clause I just mentioned is broad. It exudes deference to the president. He also found no conflict between this non-discrimination clause and the ban, saying that there's a difference between the issuance of visas and entry. In my view, it's a distinction with no difference, right? Somebody who is denied a visa is denied entry. In fact, the administration suggested as much when it was explaining and applying the ban after December. On the Constitution, Chief Justice Roberts said that the ban itself does not violate the Establishment Clause of the U.S. Constitution. And the Establishment Clause stands for the idea that one does not favor one religion over the other. And the justification given by the majority opinion was that the ban itself has a legitimate national security purpose. It was tested under a rational basis test, and there were 3 examples that were given by Chief Justice Roberts to explain why the majority believed that there was a legitimate purpose. First, Chad was removed from the list of countries banned, so it must be working. Second, Iraq was not even part of ban number 3. And third, the ban itself had an extensive process for exemptions and waivers. There were 2 concurrences, so these are people who agreed with the majority opinion but had more to say. Justice Kennedy, on his way out, came out with a somewhat unremarkable opinion in his concurrence, saying that every president should follow the Constitution. Justice Thomas issued a slightly more colorful concurrence, stating that the president doesn't even need the suspension clause in order to issue this proclamation or ban, because there is inherent authority. He also pointed a finger towards the use of nationwide injunctions generally under the Trump administration. The 2 more blistering opinions came in the dissents. Justice Breyer issued a dissent and really focused on the waivers. The ban is designed in a way that if you are covered by the ban, if you are not exempt, then you may qualify for a discretionary waiver based on undue hardship and other factors. Justice Breyer offered the following legal theory. He said, if the waiver process is actually working, then that increases the lawfulness of this ban. If, on the other hand, the waiver process is broken and not working, then this starts to smell more like a Muslim ban. And he relied on data points, including a sworn affidavit by a consular officer saying that the waiver is really more like window dressing, as well as a story, the same he told during oral arguments in April, of a 10-year-old girl from Yemen with cerebral palsy who was denied entry and a waiver under this ban. And then finally, Justice Sotomayor issued a blistering dissent finding animus and chronicling all the statements that were made by the president against Muslims, and would have taken the case in a completely different way. So where does that leave us? I find this decision to be deeply disappointing. I think the courts failed us. As somebody who has studied and sat with the immigration statute almost every day for the last 2 decades, I think the statutory arguments should have been successful. But we don't have time to taste the setback and sit back, right? We only can move forward. And so my responsibility is to make sure that our community has accurate information about who is covered by the ban, and what it takes to apply and seek for a waiver if necessary. And I sit in State College, Pennsylvania. Penn State University is the 4th most affected university in the country by Muslim ban 1.0. I have witnessed firsthand locally and nationally postdocs from Syria who can't enter the United States, parents from Iran who can't see their kids graduate, people pregnant and having babies whose parents can't be with them, big events, milestones. When we think about family separation, which has been in the news of late this past summer, we should also be talking about the Muslim ban, because All immigrants from 6 countries are banned from being here. This is not a weekend in Disneyland. These are people in legally qualifying relationships under our immigration statute, either through family or through a U.S. employer, who are unable to be here for no other reason other than where they are from. So who is covered by the ban? All immigrants from Libya, Yemen, Iran, North Korea, Syria, Somalia, many visitors from those same countries, and a few government official visitors from Venezuela. There are some exemptions. For example, if you're a green card holder, if you're a dual national who's traveling on a passport from a non-banned country, if you have already been granted asylum or been admitted as a refugee. These are some of the examples of who is exempt. But if you are not exempt, then the only option, the only game in town really at this juncture is a waiver. And a waiver is available to somebody who can show undue hardship, that their entry is in the national interest, and that there would be no threat to national security. And there's good reason to believe that the waiver process is broken. The consulates don't actually have the discretion that is on paper. I personally find the proclamation itself to be unlawful. But this is a new day, and so my work now will be in making sure that those who need a waiver get the access they need to competent counsel and are able to have those packages ready before they have an interview with a consulate. Thank you for your time. I look forward to your questions.
Good morning. My name is Imam Hamza Perez from the Light of the Age Mosque and the Islamic Center of Pittsburgh. Regarding this Muslim ban, it continues to promote this agenda of Islamophobia here in the United States. It is said that one of the most violent elements of society is ignorance. When we look at acts of terrorism in the United States, according to the Anti-Defamation League, 85% acts of terrorism from the years 1993 to 2017 were carried out by white supremacist groups and anti-government groups, 11% by anti-abortion extremists, and 2% by anti-immigrant extremists and others. An example of this behavior of fear we just saw this week with the Representative Jason Spencer out of Georgia, how this fear and ignorance can push people to act foolishly. And so we as people here in the United States, in the city of Pittsburgh, we should come together to work with each other and to create atmospheres that are welcoming. There should be measures for immigration to make sure that the United States is safe, but they shouldn't be discriminating against certain groups. So we appreciate all the work that is being done here in the city of Pittsburgh, and we hope to work with each other more closely to help be welcoming to all communities. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Philip Snow, also known as Ibrahim Snow, and I too am with the Light of the Age Masjid on the north side. But just one little correction, I'm not a board member of the masjid, I'm a servant to the board. So I serve in the capacity of helping our community in whatever way I can. I'm a little unique in that I, like everyone else in this room, I suppose we're all unique in this way, is that I too am an immigrant, third generation removed. My parents are from Mexico and Croatia. However, I am an immigrant to the city of Pittsburgh. I moved here from California. I'm very happy for the position that Pittsburgh is taking as a lead on how to address these issues. I was traveling in Africa when the first Muslim ban came about, right in the middle of our travels. So in order to come home, I had to have a lawyer on the ground, even though I'm an American citizen. I can only imagine what that would be like if you're coming, as was mentioned earlier, to visit family members or whatnot. For me, this is a violation of the very principles what our government stands, or what our nation stands for. We're a nation of immigrants. Our strength has always been immigrants, and statistically, particularly if you look at the Muslim community, you'll find the brain trust and the talents that have produced themselves in this country through immigration are various and large. So we hope that we can address this through proper behavior and through examples and over time in the courts with the help of one another and the support of those who believe this is correct. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for being here this morning. It's kind of interesting if you think about it. We're talking about the Muslim ban, but similar actions have occurred throughout American history. The Muslim community in Pittsburgh goes back nearly 150 years, and we have been witness during that time to many other types of bans. In 1850, the city of Pittsburgh elected Joe Barker as the mayor. Joe was a minister who preached hate, and his hatred was towards the Catholics. It was the Irish and it was the Germans who were moving into Pittsburgh, where Joe spoke against. And he spoke so strongly about it, threatening to kill the bishop, that the mayor had him put in prison. And while he was in prison, his friends said, "You know who would make a great mayor? Joe." So they ran him as a write-in candidate, and the only candidate to win on this party. It was called the Anti-Catholic Party. And in 1850, as a write-in candidate, Joe won the election. He was brought out of prison to be sworn in as the mayor, and the governor's pardon hadn't come in, so he spent the first night as mayor in prison. And then he went about to do his business. Pardon came in. His first action he did is he fired every police officer and hired his own friends to be the police, which started a basic civil war on the streets of Pittsburgh. He imprisoned the bishop for an illegal sewer tap-in at Mercy Hospital. And while his term was still going, right down the street where the Union Trust building is, the Catholic cathedral was burnt to the ground. His police never were able to find out who did it, but at that same time, there was a very prevalent, strong action going on with the Know Nothing movement throughout this country. And that was based upon a hatred of Catholics. The argument was Catholics couldn't assimilate into American society. Going forward, after 1890s and the boom of the Second Industrial Revolution, where George Westinghouse was producing electricity and Andrew Carnegie was making steel, and they combined together and they could make all this steel, and they needed someone to do it, immigrants started to come from Southern Europe, from the Southern United States, and from Eastern Europe. And they moved here to Pittsburgh to build America. And people like my grandfather, who came over in 1921 to go and work in the mills for his entire life, were honored to be able to consider themselves American. But in 1924, Congress looked to change that because it wasn't the same America, they said. So they created quotas that went back to 1890, saying only a certain amount of Italians are welcome in this country. Only a certain amount of Croatians are allowed in this country. Only a certain amount of Slovaks. Only a certain amount of Jews. And we created laws that basically made it impossible for families to be united and for people to come here. My grandmother had to wait, even though her husband came over in 1921 to 1927 to be able to be reunited with it. We've made these mistakes in the past, and we've made them right here in the city of Pittsburgh, and we're not going to make them again. This is the history that is taught to us. This is the history of why, when somebody says, yes, but my grandparents came over illegally, it's because of the laws we create that say what is legal and what is not legal. And we've had to change those laws by different times of our history when we have gone toward hatred in order to be able to craft them. We, as City of Pittsburgh residents, will stand to welcome all. We will stand to be a city that recognizes, just as this economy and this country was built by the backs and the arms of the immigrants that came in the 1920s, our future is dependent on the minds of the immigrants who will come in 2020. And we have to be understanding of all cultures and be more than welcoming of all cultures in order to be able to see that true potential be met. This is something where mayors across this country stand together, both Democrat and Republican, in recognizing that we've made these mistakes before, in realizing that the solutions come not from Washington, but from the people themselves, and the people's voice being recognized at a local level, and then a state level, and then a congressional level. These laws, this Supreme Court decision, they'll all be overturned. They were in the past, and they will again. But in this moment, there needs to be voices standing up and speaking out in order to make that happen. And that's why I'm honored to have Pittsburgh joining cities from around this country in making sure that that happens.
Hello, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Wasim Mohammed. I'm the executive director of Engage Pennsylvania, a Muslim political advocacy organization, as well as the Islamic Center of Pittsburgh. I also have the honor of serving as a member and chair of Mayor Peduto's Welcoming Pittsburgh Steering Committee. And thank you so much for those words. Thank you, Fayal Soba, for helping to put this together, and the allyship that we've seen. And it's really exactly what we need right now. Also, it's important to note, that we've made these mistakes in the past, right? And then this Muslim ban, calling it what it is an attack on the Muslim community. It's an attack on religious liberty. It's an attack on the Constitution of the United States of America and what makes us exceptional as a country, right? This attack is not one that is new. It's one that a minority group each generation has to undergo, at least one of them. And it's part of our history. And yes, I'm hopeful that it'll be overturned and that one day it'll go back, because in a lot of these other situations that has happened, but there are still minority groups that suffer to this day, and then none of that happened by itself, right? It's not something that naturally happens. And it's something that we can't normalize, and we have to change as our tradition as this country. How come we can get so afraid each generation, have that fear, and it allows us to sacrifice all these liberties that we've fought for, that we've founded our country upon, and get rid of all of them for the sake of national security, quote unquote? Why did the Muslim ban get passed, right? Why was that an executive order that was extremely popular? Why was that in campaigns when you say that we want to ban all Muslims from the United States of America, that you get raucous applause? Because there's this false narrative that's out there that Muslims, regardless of where they're from, regardless of any nuances that there are all complicit in the violence that's happening around the world, and some that has happened in our country. And this is ridiculous. However, it's a common notion. So because of that, executive orders, national security directives, all of this follows. Despite 130 national security experts from the highest levels have all said that there is no correlation between national origin and religion and terrorist violence within the United States of America and even worldwide. These experts are the ones that I would believe. But it's easy to embed fear within the American public, as a history has shown. And this fear allows us to make irrational decisions. And I don't want the Muslim ban to get rid of the Muslim ban to make us less safe as Americans. We don't want that. We understand that these national security experts said that this ban actually makes us less safe, because it's used as a tool to recruit people and extremists by these organizations and associations that we fight against, that condemn us as the American Muslim community, and we condemn them. However, this is giving them ammo, and it does nothing to make us more safe. One of my staff members had her husband, father passed away, in overseas. They're Syrian Americans. Whenever they want to go over, they got stuck during the ban abroad, and they couldn't come back, right? And I was thinking that, is that really what it is right now, right? Is that making us more safe? That these individuals who wanted to build a life in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, one of them was born and raised here, converted to the religion. The other one came here, loved it so much, loved the welcoming community that they wanted to stay. We've had very highly skilled, both of them. We're contributing to the Pittsburgh community, gems of the Muslim community, gems of the Pittsburgh community. Now they're stuck, right? And then they want to bring their family back with them because their father just died, their mother's alive, their cousins and everybody are there. They want to bring them over here. However, all the ban stuff came out. They got stuck there for 6 months. They moved everybody to Canada. That was a solution. And then I assume that that's where they're going to go eventually because Canada's welcoming them, right? I had somebody email the Islamic Center of Pittsburgh asking, I'm from India, there's a position at CMU that I have an offer for. I want to come here, but everything I see on TV is that they hate us. They're going to hate me because I'm Muslim. They're going to hate me because I'm foreign and an immigrant. They're going to hate me because I'm a person of color. Is it true? And I was like, no, I mean, the mayor's office here, the city, this is a welcoming place. The vibe is different. You don't understand. That's not everywhere. These white supremacist rallies aren't everywhere, but you see them on the news. It's just understand that, it's a good community here. And then the second iteration of the ban came out, and I never heard from that person again. These people are highly trained. They can contribute here. And even if they weren't, they still should be welcome here because those are our principles, those are our values. But that's not what happens anymore. Right? And a little bit of fear can really grow in the American public. So in terms of actions, in terms of what can we do moving forward, we have to make sure that this kind of presidential overreach that attacks our basic liberties as Americans is not acceptable because that is very dangerous if parts of the Constitution can just be ignored for us as Americans. So we have to ensure that we call our legislators. The congressional switchboard is 202-224-3121, and let them know how disappointed we are and that we want to hear them say that, right? Don't ride this out. We understand it's a Supreme Court decision, but it's important for my community and for other Americans that trampling on religious liberties, trampling on parts of the Constitution is not acceptable, and you're going to say that publicly right now, because you can't say it later when the political climate has changed. It's not going to count. So you call them now and get them to commit to it now. Support whoever you can who's fighting against this, like the Immigration Law Clinic over there, any other organizations. If you want to keep up on the fight, mgageusa.org, no Muslim ban forever, nomuslimbanever.com. These are tracking the fights. You can see what's going on, come to local actions and protest, understand how you can contribute in that way, and then make your voice heard by signing the petition by the ACLU and then these organizations as well. And finally, I think once again, this mayor's office, who has committed for the Welcoming Pittsburgh Committee and the Islamic Center of Pittsburgh to partner on next year's Citizenship Day, which brings together legal providers, community vendors to encourage interest in becoming a naturalized citizen and to provide pro bono services and helping work through the application. This is extremely important, not just logistically and practically, because I know my community needs it, and a lot of people love this city, and we would love to see them stay. And as Pittsburgh, in the next 10 years in the region, we're going to lose like 80,000 people from the workforce. So it's not just like they're benefiting and we're getting nothing. We need these people. They've enriched our community since as far back as the steel rush. And there's never been a metropolitan area in the history of the United States of America that has grown without immigration. And refugees serve a great role within our community. So this program will allow them to get the resources they need, but it's also symbolic that these policies that are coming from our federal government, the next time I have somebody email in saying that I'm considering coming to the United States of America, I hear all of these things, what's going on? I can point to the mayor's office having an initiative with the Islamic Center of Pittsburgh, particularly showing us that we're welcome within the city of Pittsburgh. And I can show that I had dozens and dozens of people calling me trying to figure out how can I help? How can I call a legislator? How can I come to a rally? What do you need? Because although a lot of these things do get reversed eventually, there are a lot of people who suffer in the meantime. And as a last call to action is that you have to be there for those people. You have to understand that they're going to be suffering. And you have to understand that they'll never get this time back with their family. They'll never get to bury their loved ones like they wanted to. They'll never get to see that wedding. And to be there for them at this time is crucial. And to fight until they're treated like all the rest of the American people is what we have to do. So thank you so much, everybody.